All right, thank you. Yeah, and I want you guys to ask questions and to make comments and stuff during this presentation. I used an emoji in the title, so you can probably tell it's going to be kind of lighthearted. Yeah, so I'm here today to talk to you about graph crimes. Um, you may be wondering what that is, but first I will tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Carissa Typaldos. There was a picture there, but it is gone for some reason. I hope my other pictures are here. I'm a data analyst at Devoteam Creative Tech, which is the building right back over there, like 2-minute walk. You could see it from here. And I like, in my free time, I like cats, and I like hiking, and I don't like the US, but I'm from there. And I'm also a graph criminal, as I'm sure many of you are, and basically everyone featured in this presentation. Oh, there I am. Slow to appear, but I'm here. Oh, okay. So this talk was inspired by this tweet that I found, which has been a big influence on my life. It's just an insane data visualization. I have a zoomed-in version of this, and if anyone can tell me what is going on, like, you get a gold star, because I'm not sure that anyone can follow this. Also, it's very pixelated here, but this was during COVID. I'm pretty sure it has to do with, increase or decrease in deaths. I think it's technically a scattered line, scattered line chart, something like that. But you have to connect, like, the dots over time to see if there was an increase or decrease in COVID deaths. Anyway, it's just a disaster. And ever since I found this, I've been looking for more disaster charts because I love them. But to get back to what a graph crime is, like many of you, I've been playing with this GPT since it came out on Wednesday. I've been losing sleep over this. But I had it plot for me what some graph crimes could be and their severity. And its answers were not labeling axes. That's a graph crime, maybe. Mixing bar and line graphs. Using 3D effects. Really hate that, so I get that. Incorrectly scaling axes, using different y-axis scales, and misleading data. So I think that's pretty good. I would say it's a decent suggestion. We'll talk about some of them today. I didn't have this AI write the whole presentation, or you would hear more about those. This is the classic, right? Everybody's like worst enemy, the pie chart, for the obvious reason that it's really hard to know like the size of these. What percentage do they actually take in the pie? And I think that that's an example of a graph crime. And you should probably avoid pie charts. The human eye isn't that good at detecting them. This shows like the scale of these are the easiest for humans to understand, and the other end is the hardest for them to understand. So pie charts aren't doing that good. But yeah, things like bar charts and scatter are better. So try to use those if you can. This is my guilty pleasure, which Benny knows about. This is also an example of one of my graph crimes. I told you I was a graph criminal. This is an example of one. I like using pie charts when they say the percentage on the section, and then you can get an idea of how big it is, of course. And then it just makes like for a more fun visualization, right, than a bar chart. And I think in this case the crime is okay. It's maybe a less severe crime. I don't know. Your mileage may vary. This is another another graph crime, I think. One of these is the population of South Africa in a heat map, and the other one is crime in South Africa. And I don't think by looking at this that you can tell which is which, because they're basically the same, because crime happens where people live. It's not that useful of a chart. Do any of you want to guess which is which? Which is crime and which is population? Left is crime? Yeah, left is crime. Okay, so maybe it's not so bad. The coloring, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't recommend those. This is a personal rule of mine, but I think it's really bad if you've got way too much going on in your chart. I don't think anyone can follow along with what's happening if there's all of those, all this other distracting stuff. Your chart, I think, should say like one thing, basically, And then there will be no misunderstandings. I have a lot of experience in my work with data analysis where like I get really excited about something, I'm going to present some data, and then like everyone just focuses on a total other part of the chart that I didn't intend for them to focus on. So they get distracted by it. So I think you can show like one thing. It's all people can handle. We have short attention spans. You also need to play to your audience. There are times when you can share different kinds of graphs that you can't in other times. People will only understand something if they have the background for it. This is an example of that, in my opinion. This is a box plot, which I personally do not understand. I think maybe a lot of you in this room, because this is a data room, they will understand. But I think in your average work, this is just going to go over people's heads in the same way that maybe this is. You can mislead people if you want to. If they have like a low data literacy, you can tell them like, look at us, we're the best, when really, right there in the middle of the bell curve. Another graph crime is that I didn't cite the artist because I cannot read that signature. This one might be going more into more of what the second talk is going to talk about, but you can have a lie factor in your graphs if the size of the effect shown in the graph is different than the size of the effect shown in the data. This should equal 1, right? Every difference in reality should be the same scale in the graph. That might not make that much sense, but if you look in this example, it looks like there's a huge difference in April. Just looks massive, but that's just because this is not starting at 0, right? Which makes the difference here look so much bigger than it actually is. And so we get a lie factor, which we can calculate, 2.28. I know you guys like numbers. But now is the really fun part where we get to be judges of other people's work and see if they're committing graph crimes or not, according to us. A lot of my stuff is from Twitter. You might have noticed I'm a fan. I think this is pretty cute. What's the best way to toast a toast? Do you guys think is this a good graph? Yeah? No? C4, yeah, exactly. C4. Is that your favorite one? Yeah, that one, yeah. I like this one. I'm a terrible person. But can you tell me why or why not this is good? Do you want to wait for the mic?
All right. So like I don't hate it, but the axes don't really make any sense because the x-axis is amount toasted, and so is the y-axis. So yeah, doesn't really make a difference,
No, 100%. That's exactly what I would have said. Like, these labels don't mean anything. And also, why are there 2 axes? It could just be along, like, one line. I guess they did this because it's cute, right? In which case, maybe it's not a crime. Then we have this one, my personal favorite, actually, that I will show you today. In my opinion, this graph does everything wrong that can be done wrong. Maybe you guys have some thoughts about it. I think, first of all, what I think is pretty funny is that it looks like a line chart over time, but it goes to the future, right? And there's really only 2 data points on here from 2010 and 2023. All this stuff in the middle is like meaningless. It could have been a bar chart. And literally every single thing has its own y-axis scale. These are not in any kind of order. It's just total madness. Not to mention the circle. Like, what does that even do? What's it referring to? It's circling. This is mine. No, the circle's not mine. It came from a place. Yeah, and I looked. Yeah, this is a real company, and they're hiring. So I think they need all of you. This is another classic one. First of all, it's a pie chart, which we hate. But it did label, its percentages. What's wrong with this one, or what's right with this one? The other 2 circles are just aesthetic. I don't know. It's great question. No, exactly. Yeah, this doesn't sum up to 100%, right? It goes over 100%.
Also, you get confused when with the 44% and the 1%. It feels like it's in the same part, you know.
Yeah, exactly. The line doesn't clearly point to this. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think there's a lot we can say that's gone wrong with this one. This is, yeah, a recent relevant tweet, maybe. This means daily active users. Maybe this one is more complicated. I don't know. I don't know what you guys think about this one. I know what I think. Someone want to share? Nobody wants to talk about Elon Musk. It's too sensitive. I think the biggest crime of this graph is stopping here. Do we know what was going on before? Do we know the active users? I think this also commits the lie factor problem by starting at 243 million. It's kind of a weird place to start your graph. Like, this is like 3 million users, which when you have 240 some million, like, is that really a problem? I don't know. This is from the subreddit Data is Beautiful, and I disagree that it's beautiful in this case. I also have a problem with this because this got 16,000 upvotes, and it's like someone literally just like took the default of this graph. Yeah, I think it's like the colors repeat themselves, they're meaningless, you know, you can't find the top like country tier. What else do you guys think? Do you have more? I can say my opinions as well. That's okay with me. I think number of obese people in the world doesn't really make sense as a metric for measuring obesity in a country. It's just like large countries, but also I have a personal problem with it. You know, like I said, that's where I'm from. It's number one. Yeah, so I think they could have done better here. I think maybe if they'd organize the colors by like continent, right? Maybe like all of Europe is like shades of blue or something. You would have gotten more information from this. Not to mention these other countries. It's just the count. It doesn't make sense. But this one's kind of cute. Do you know what's going on in this one? Yeah, some yeses and nos. Where this, what is this, the knight? I'm showing my lack of chess knowledge. How many moves it takes to get to each position, right? Because they can move like 2 and 3. Yeah, 2, 3. 2 and 1. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a fun way of visualizing it. I don't have a problem with this one. I don't think it committed any crimes. I put it here as a kind of cool example. This is data from my own life, from my Fitbit, which stopped working this morning, but I wore it to visualize where I got this data from. I guess you can guess which day I bought my Fitbit, and maybe you can see why I'm upset with this graph. Does it make sense to do an average daily step and count all the days before I bought this? My real average is 10,000. You guys can take my word for it. Maybe this is also political, but she's asking if this looks like a blue state, right? In American elections, the counties vote, the districts. What crime could this be committing?
Land doesn't get to vote.
Land doesn't get to vote. Yeah, this is kind of like the population one, right? Like everyone lives here in this part of, I think this is Washington State. This is like mountains and farms. But I think every time there's an election, this happens, and people are like, look, it's so red. You're like, is it really? We should do it by population. This one's also kind of fun. Leonardo DiCaprio refuses to date a woman over 25. Yeah, all of his girlfriends. They were almost the same age, but still never, right? He's always been older than them. And this is, you can tell, like a little in the past. It's 2022 now. She turned 25. They split this summer. So he's on track. This graph still holds. We'll see about the next one. And I have a final one for you, which is me asking the chat AI to make a hilariously bad graph. And this is the code that it gave me, which I ran. I think it's pretty bad. I don't know how funny it is. I think there were funnier ones, but, you know, it's learning. It's kind of insane. Remember, it doesn't like 3D anything in its graph, and it put it like in the middle of another graph. Yeah, I think it's pretty bad. I would say that's a terrible graph. Yeah, but thank you for listening. Maybe that was shorter than I thought. Yeah. I forgot to admit my biggest graph crime, which is I stole the name Graph Crimes from a Twitter account. So I recommend you follow them. They're really good. And there's some more there. Yeah, but thank you. Go to the next one.
Any more questions, thoughts?
I have a question for you. What do you think of graphs that are very pictorial, like that kind of like if they show like a number of trees on an area that is shaped like a tree, or like, do you think it's a good idea, or do you think it's like too literal?
I think it's a great question. Am I on now? Or am I muted? Yeah. No, I think that's honestly the best. I think I recently went to a talk by a guy who was a journalist, and they always do things like this because they're really eye-catching. And I think that's really a great way to communicate with them. But I think for like your average like data scientist, like, do I have to learn how to like use Figma? Question mark. How do I make a tree graph? I don't know. So, but if you can do it, I totally support that. Whatever gets like the message in like these subtle ways. Yeah. Unfortunately, I only talked about bad things, so I don't have any advice for making good stuff. Were there any more questions?
Most things that you went over were pretty objective things, right? Things that are just plain bad to do. But curious on your perspective on like subjective things. Is there such a thing specifically with graphs? Like maybe something is quite clear to some people, but not others. Like how much do you think that plays a part?
Yeah, I think you always have to be subjective because there are going to be so many circumstances that don't like follow like normal rules, you know? Like, I mean, you heard my subjective view that I hate box plots, right? That's just my personal view. I'm sure like in like maybe a scientific setting or something, they're really good. I think you can you can commit all of these crimes. Like I admitted to being a criminal as well. Like you can do it if you have a good enough reason. I don't know if you want like more examples of that, but I think you're free to do what you think is best, but kind of like things to keep in mind, you know, when you're making them, so they can be understood. All right, cool. Thank you. It's your turn now, I think.
Can you guys hear me? Is it a thing? Yeah? Excellent. Okay, but then thank you, Carissa, for an excellent talk. I was really hoping that this won't happen, but we do overlap a little bit, so sorry for boring you, but I'm gonna try to go really fast over those parts. But anyway, thanks for taking the time and making it here in the snow and everything for the talk about how to lie with statistics. And this is not a guide; it's a book that I'm going to talk about. This one in particular. So, but let's dive straight into it. So first, a little bit of intro. So I'm going to be honest here. My name is David Božjak, and I'm not a data professional, so I'm an imposter here, but thanks for having me. I have a software developer background. I worked as a software engineer at like small companies and enormous companies and everything in between. And there I worked quite a bit with sort of like instrumenting data, putting sort of like user preferences tracking or user behavior tracking into software, and then getting that the results back and analyzing it. So I think I've learned a fair bit to contribute in that setting. And then at some point I switched tracks to become a manager, and there I see the results more than, you know, like doing any actual work. So here I'm, you know, like there I'm looking a lot more about, you know, like getting the results back of what we're doing, trying to make data-driven decisions. And there, you know, like topics like these, how to lie with statistics, become very relevant. So that's kind of like what my background is. But I'm also, I was hoping this is going to show. Currently, it's very relevant that I'm a huge advocate of code fanatic. So if you ask me about that, be prepared that I won't shut up forever. So you know, you've been warned now. And then about the talk, like I've actually been inspired by one of the organizers of this group, Johnny. I was here at the previous meeting, and then he had this talk, like, what do you actually see when you see a graph? And in that talk, Johnny read an article. They did a bunch of research trying to analyze, you know, like how you have these seemingly visual choices, like, or aesthetic decisions, you know, like how wide the bars in the bar charts are, or, you know, like what's the aspect ratio. They were doing these kind of things and then trying to see what people remembered for the graph, or what, you know, like what kind of biases they exhibited. And I was sitting there, and I was like, wow, but this almost sounds like How to Lie with Statistics. And it turned out that some of the audience haven't read the book, so I thought, oh, but this, you know, this is my chance, and I have a big mouth, and it tends to get me in trouble. So here I am paying for that mistake. But I plan on following his example. So I'm showing prior art. I'm not the author of anything here that I'm going to show. So if you know, like, so I'm super happy to engage in discussion, answer questions, but none of it is my work. So my level of expertise is very limited here. But then let's dive into it. So How to Lie with Statistics, the evergreen classic. So this book is ancient, right? Like it's first published in 1954, which kind of like in computer science world is, you know, like, all Stone Age. But it is, like, from the wiki, like it is the best-selling statistics book of the second half of the 20th century. I don't know how many statistics books they sell, but still, like that seems like a good accomplishment. And it's tiny. It's 120 pages, but all of it is really gold. So it's something that you can take, you know, like in the afternoon, sit down, you know, like browse through and take really a lot of value very quickly out. So it's really, like, it's really condensed and evergreen. And it reads as an actual guide to the would-be deceiver. Like it actually teaches you how to misuse statistics or how to lie statistics, but it does it in this very kind of like tongue-in-cheek style. So he does, you know, spoiler, he does come clean in the last chapter. He doesn't actually intend to for you to lie with statistics or misuse statistics, but instead, you know, it was a funnier way of writing the book. So today I plan to present sort of like a shallow dive into 3 out of the 9 themes that are in the book, just as an intro, just enough to, you know, like my hope is really to inspire you to read the book. So I'm trying not to give anything away, just taking the easy example from each of the 3 themes. And I don't actually have that much material, so please, like, engage, please share your thoughts and stuff. If we do end before the pizzas get here, which would be very awkward, then I have some bonus slides. But I'm hoping not to show those because they're super unpolished. So please, you know, talk. But let's drive some right into it. And here I'm going to try to, this is very scary for me, but I'm going to try to recreate a part of one theme of the book, which is about sort of like poll data and how, you know, like one can misuse poll data. So we're going to try this, and it's not going to work, and we're going to have a laugh about it. You know. But anyway, by a show of hands, do you like answering surveys? Yes or no? Okay, we have some yeses, yeah. Any no's? Okay. Okay, this didn't work, but we're having a laugh about it, so excellent, so good. So in the book, how it was intended to go is that we would see something like this. So we would see like quite a lot of the people saying yes, like I like surveys, like I can do that, and then having some no, right? But the funny, and then, you know, like the chapter of the book, or like this, you know, like the insight that is then drawn from this is like, oh yeah, we have 9 yeses, we have 1 no, so 90% of the population loves answering surveys, which is obviously false. Like we all know, and then you are very active in participating. Everybody hates answering surveys, so this is, yeah, this is false. But the book makes an interesting question, like in an intro, like, okay, but how does this insight change, or how valid is this insight if we reveal just one more point of information, which is this one? What if we actually asked that question to 10,000 people, and those are the results that we got. Like, we got 9 yeses, we got 1 no, 90% of population, right? 90% of respondents said that they love answering surveys. So is this still a valid insight? Can we still extrapolate that to the whole population? You know, it feels unlikely, right? So what's happening here is that this is an example of a self-selection bias, right? People who don't answer surveys, they didn't answer the survey, right? So so that's why, you know, like you can get kind of like these false insights, and this, when you think about it more, like this can really put doubt on the whole sort of like self-reported data, which is, you know, like a lot of insights are drawn from self-reported data. And here, and please remember, this is like in 1954, right? But still, this is the example like that where this is kind of like in the book, this is taken into practice. So try not to read this too much, but basically they did a survey asking Protestant ministers, hey, how many converts from Catholics to Protestants have you had in the last 10 years? And they sent out this survey, and then they got some answers, and then they extrapolated, and they said, hey, wow, some like 4 million people have switched from Catholic to Protestant in the last 10 years in the US. And you can read this and think, wow, you know, Catholics, like they're really in trouble in the US, right? Like 4 million, 10 years, right? But there actually, we do have a piece of data that reveals sort of like the trick right here, right? So we asked the question to 25,000 people, right? And 2,200 have responded. And then we've extrapolated the data from those 2,200 and said that it applies to the whole population. Right? So the book argues here that, of course, we can't know, but probably at least some of those 23,000 ministers that haven't responded, they haven't responded because they don't have good numbers, right? That the numbers aren't actually that good, so they didn't bother, you know, like putting that in a form, and then it was 1954, so I guess then they have to put in an envelope and go to the post office. Like they didn't bother doing that. So this insight, like this 4 million Americans, is probably, you know, like way off base because of this self-selection bias. So this is one of the themes in the book, and it's like it goes into many examples. And it goes like, it makes a fair case, I would say, that especially self-reported data when it comes to money is very dangerous. Like money is a loaded topic, you know, like people are either like shy about it or they are boastful about it. And really like self-reported data when it comes to money is very unreliable. And I think that's, you know, just as valid today as it was in 1954. Does anybody have any thoughts on the sort of like the first section of the book before I move on? Pizzas aren't here yet. So.
I read a lot about science done on I don't find the words, what we eat, basically, our habits. And it's super hard to get people to report on that, which makes it
One slice of pizza.
Yeah, a super hard topic to make big population science on. Because everyone eats. You can't like smoke, you either smoke or you don't. Everyone eats. So it's just a question of how much, how often, and so forth. And it's still a big problem when it comes to this field of science.
Cool. Thanks, Andreas. Thanks for that thought. Any more thoughts?
Like maybe you'll cover this later, but I was thinking about it like when you presented it. Like if you have these cases, right, where where you have a self-selection bias and people won't respond to your survey or whatever, what do you actually do with that information? If you get what I mean, like the survey results themselves, can you make any reasonable conclusions from that, or can you extrapolate it from it at all, or can you do you simply have to stop at people that answer this survey and has this opinion, whatever. Is there like, can you draw any data from it, or do you just have to throw it in the garbage?
Yeah, again, like I'm going to go to that prefix from before. Like I'm not a data professional, right? So probably like everybody else in this room is more qualified than I to answer that. But I would assume, or at least like as the receptor of data often, like I would still value the research as long as the biases are very transparent. So if I can learn like how many people didn't answer the survey, or like if I learn more about people who do answer the survey, like what biases they might have, then this information can still be valid, right? Like so it could be that, you know, maybe all of these 2,200 people are from the same state, and then maybe like everybody from that state actually answered the survey. So maybe this is a valid piece of research for that state, but not for the US as a whole. So I think being transparent with what you know about the respondents could, like still, like make you much worse at lying with statistics, basically. Cool, but thanks for those. I'm gonna move on to the next one. So this one, it was a big theme in the book. Like I think that this room is like full of data professionals who are very clever. So you're going to get this, but like bear with me here. But this one is about like the well-chosen average, and and the story here goes, hey, imagine you're buying a house and you're asking lots of questions. Like you're a very inquisitive person. You must be. You're a data professional. You're asking lots of questions and you're very picky about sort of like the area where you want to go. So you have lots of thoughts about that. So, at different points in the process of buying a house, like different questions come up, you're kind of getting these different answers. So imagine that you're hearing like, hey, the average family income in this area is 5 million crowns. Right? And then you ask a little bit later, like maybe the conversation goes about like property taxes or something. And then you hear like, oh, but the family income in this area is only 2 million crowns. So you don't have to worry about property taxes at all. And like at a third point, like you hear yet a third number. So here, like, because I think like you can see where this is going, like I'm actually going to read you out from the book just to kind of like give you a feel of the style, how the book actually reads. That is the essential beauty of doing your lying with statistics. All of those figures are legitimate averages, legally arrived at. All represent the same data, the same people, and the same incomes. All the same, it is obvious that at least one of them must be a so misleading lie to rival an out and out lie. So, as you've probably gotten here, right? Like this is the case of like using different statistic tools that kind of like all fall under the umbrella of average, right? So here in this case, like this is the arithmetic mean, and then this is mode, and this is a median, right? And like a small refresher, like arithmetic mean is the one that you take all of the elements and then you sum them by the number of the elements. Mode is the one if you sorted all of the, median is the one if you sorted all of the elements and they took the middle one. And mode is the one that is most frequently represented, right? So this is this is how it continues. Difference kind of average each time. The word average having a very loose meaning. It is a trick commonly used, sometimes in innocence, but often in guilt. When you're told that something is an average, you still don't know very much about it, unless you can find out which of the common kinds of average it is. And here, mean, median, or mode. So what's going on here? Like what's happening? So it turns out that, like, I have a personal hypothesis here that, like, I think there's actually a language thing. Turns out that, like median, mode, and arithmetic mean are actually quite close together when you're doing with a sort of like a normal distribution, like a nice Gaussian bell curve. Like then these will actually line up pretty well. So like Swedish isn't my mother tongue, but Slovenian is, and I can confirm that like it's the same there, like that these words would be like kind of like call this go under the same umbrella. Is it the same in Swedish? Like can the word like genomsnitt like refer to different statistical tools? So here, like I'm thinking that normally, like like we're thinking about like either like heights or like some natural phenomenon, and then they would follow a normal distribution, and it wouldn't matter. Like it's okay.
We do differentiate between median and
Okay.
so that's a positive thing.
Okay. Yeah. It's Swedish is a little better off. Okay. But when we're dealing with skewed distribution, like then like when we don't have a nice normal curve, like then these can differ quite a lot, as you've also seen in the previous example. So like here, like you can get away with a lot by using the word average, hiding which one you've used, and obviously using the one that suits you best, right? And here, like another big theme of the book is that, maybe its overall theme, like money there is nothing normal about money, right? There's nothing natural about money, so there is no reason to expect that money in any money statistic will follow a normal distribution. Money information money data is often skewed, and there, like the difference between these three are really going to like play interest. Yes.
As probably being the completely least data person here, completely least-data person, I have to say that before I started to talk to people like you, for me, average is one thing, and that's the genomsnitt. Only. So if you come as if there comes a realtor and uses different averages, it would never land in my brain.
And therefore make it even more, like, a better tool when you know. Like, yeah. Cool. Okay, so I kind of gave it away a little bit, but yeah, figures representing money usually don't follow a normal distribution. And then this is another thing, like here it even allows for some creative accounting, right? So here I'm going to give another example. It's part sort of like this, which average to choose, and part sort of like creative accounting. So let's see if we can, I can spike some discussions. So imagine that you have a company. Again, these are numbers from 1954. Like don't try not to pick on them too much. But basically, like we have a company and it's had a good year, and then I have to give a yearly report. So then these are like the complete facts. Like so, no tricks in this. So $99,000 was paid out to 90 employees as salaries, and then this company has 3 owners, and they each had like set their own salary. So that's 5.5K. And then after paying all of their dues and debts and so on, like they had a good year, so they made $21,000 profits, and then decided to split those profits between those three owners. So now they have to write this yearly report, right? So they could go with this, like with this way, right? So they could say, okay, yeah, like average wage of employees of those 99 people is 1,100. And they happen to choose mode here because it's the most frequent one. So it's just going to be like a nice low number. And then average salary and profit of owners then is $12,500. So 5.5 and 21 divided by 3, 7. So we're not going to get political during this talk, but you can see how somebody might get worried before posting this type of data. Like, hey, like maybe some workers are going to be really upset about, like the amount of money that is shared between the workforce and the owners. So, like, this is a way that you could go, but another completely legal way to do it is to have this option too. And there's many ways, right? Like, the list is not extensive. But imagine something like this instead, right? So you take 15K out of those 21K, and you distribute it among owners as bonuses. And then and now when you put out the line about like average wage or salary, you happen to use arithmetic mean, and you include the owners into the workers because they also get a salary, right? So they're salaried employees. So then you get to an average of 1,403. So what remains is $6,000. You split that 3 ways. So you say that you paid out $2,000 as profits, right? So again, like this is the same data, the same amount of money that was divided. But here, like this one is much less likely to feel unfair or to raise an eyebrow, right? So probably less, fuck it is going to go on in this case. I'm about to jump into my third theme, but again, like without maybe talking too much about morality about this. But does anybody have any thoughts on averages?
I think overall that we tend to be obsessed with averages. And often it's the distribution that actually tells us anything. So I think that's a problem, especially looking at the reports for perhaps management, senior management. It's always averages, and it's not telling too much often.
Yeah.
Not sure if anyone agrees, but.
Okay, but thanks for that thought. And then I'm going to jump into the last theme. And again, like the pizzas are not here, so it's okay. But here is where the danger lies. Like I knew that the talk before mine was going to be about graphs, so I wanted to go really easy on this section. But still, like there is some overlap. But let's see what we can find out. But there is a lot about graphs in the book, as you would expect, and I tried to keep it really slim. So going with an example again, let's imagine that, again, we have a company and they had a good year again. So they managed to increase their monthly revenues by 10% throughout the year, from 20 billion to 22 billion. So let's start with, like not a graph crime. So like a good graph according to the book. So this is something how it would look, right? Okay, the axes aren't labeled, but that's my fault. Like I was redoing this from Excel. But like the axis starts at 0, 20 billion in January, 22 billion in December. It kind of like tells us that there was like a steady increase for the first half of the year, and then after the summer, the sort of like the speed of change picked up. So like we have a, like these guys really had a positive autumn, is maybe what we can tell from this graph. And like we can see, 10% increase. This is like a good informative graph. But it doesn't look very dramatic, right? So that might not get us the praise that we like so desperately need, or I don't know about you, but I really need praise, right? So we can do some minuscule changes to really change the perception of this graph, like the takeaway, limiting, like stopping from lying, but definitely manipulating sort of like the takeaway message. So imagine that we had instead have a graph like this. So this is the same data, right? 20 billion in January, 22 billion in December, but it looks a lot more dramatic, right? So now today I've learned that this is a lie factor, right? That wasn't invented in 1954. It's not in the book, so we've. This is excellent. So so here all that was done was the aspect ratio of the graph changed a little bit, speaking to what was Johnny was speaking about in the last iteration of this. What's it called? Yeah, data lines. Yeah, and like it's kind of like zoomed in, like from like from 0, like now it starts at 18 to 24. So we kind of like zoomed in here. And the interesting thing when I was recreating, so I recreated this graph exactly, like it looks exactly as in the book, as close as I was able to come. But the interesting thing was just putting these numbers in Excel and just creating like, hey, create graph, like a normal chart, actually created this. Which, like, argued is even more dramatic, right? Like it's, like the aspect ratio is a little bit different again, and like it starts at 19, like so it's even more zoomed in. So that could mean that like we've gotten kind of like normalized since 1954, and like we're kind of like almost expecting this to happen now, or like that everybody who lies with statistics uses Excel. Who knows? But this is this was a tangent, like, but this is just the default graph created. Like we can go further. Like if we really wanted to get promoted in that company, right? Like this presenting the same data, we could show something like this. Right? So now this is ridiculous, right? Oh, now this is ridiculous, but I mean it shows the same data, right? Like you could argue that there is no lying here, but I would argue that very few people would like look at this graph in the newspaper, like browsing through and say, "Wow, this company had a 10% increase during last year." Like I don't, So here is where the sort of like the aim or manipulation that comes in. And then continuing did you mean to ask a question? Continuing sort of like the same example about a company, it has another side section or small section called the misrepresenting the single dimension. So I said, hey, I can do these two, like 2 in 1 a little bit. And here, I think this isn't actually that common anymore, but maybe it was in 1954, or I don't read the right newspaper. But apparently, a very manipulative thing that you can do is, if you have a bar chart, you can kind of like replace the size, or like the bar, with a picture. And then, like that will sort of like, you can present the same data, but because it's a picture, like that will trick your brain into thinking, hey, this is a 3-dimensional object, or like they can take more space also, like like horizontally, not only vertically. So here the author argues this is really misrepresenting the single dimension because only the height of the bar here is yielding information. So again here, like this is showing this 10% increase, but it's really not, like it's like, I think few of us would take a glance of this and say, hey, this is a 10% increase, even though we can do the math and we can look at the numbers and it's correct. Because we would say, wow, like that bag of money is like many times bigger than the first one. So I should buy stock immediately. Right? So now, like, to be fully transparent, like I was trying to recreate this from in Excel from the book, and I was struggling with it. It wasn't actually like that easy. So maybe that's why also it's not so popular. But what was easy to do, very easy to do, is this. And here, like I added these red bars so that, like here, like the x-axis, like the width argument goes away. But Excel is doing us kind of like a favor, keeping the aspect ratio of the image so that it doesn't get blurred. But again, like we would walk away here think like, wow, that, you know, that December figure, like that, those are 3 bags of money. Like it's 3 times as much as, you know, like the one in January, even though, yes, we can do the math and it's a 10% increase, but that's not the takeaway message that we would have. So this is an excellent tool. Like, you know, if you want to get, what did I say? If you want to get promoted, you know, this is the. Any thoughts on that before I move on? Or maybe you've seen a data like a. Did anybody see this like in the wild?
Yeah, I was just saying, I've seen many times bar charts where the bar is a figure of something. It could be like a human body or a tree, and you kind of mix up the height with the area. I think it's not so uncommon.
Yeah,
It always
then I just
confuses
didn't
me.
search hard enough. Yeah. Cool, but then the graphs were my third theme here. So some takeaways from you, again, like from not from me, but from the book. But like I think this is a point that especially you as data professionals can really agree with. But you know, presenting data is just as much as an art as a science, right? There is of course like lots of equations that you can do and lots of math and lots of statistical tools, but when you're analyzing it, you're preparing to tell a story. And when you give out that report, you're telling a story. And you're very much in control what that story is going to be. Like more maybe that you're aware of. So, you know, that you can really take away from reading this book. And then when, like on the flip side, like when reading any sort of like statistic or any sort of like data, try to analyze your own reaction, especially like if you have an emotional reaction, and try to see if it was engineered, if it was manufactured, if somebody intended you for you to think this or feel this way. Somebody trying to sell you something, you know, like is somebody, you know, this is an excellent way to kind of like spot the problems. And then the last takeaway, I think like this, you know, there's quite a lot of math in this book. There's equations and there's graph and so on, but really it is often not the math that is wrong. Like it is the story around it that is misleading you. So you can be one of those people who is, you know, very diligent. You can, you know, like see statistics and you get your pocket calculator out and you can like double check the figures. But most likely they're going to be right. Most likely it's sort of like the context around the actual data or presented data, the data visualization, that's kind of like there to, you know, to get you. And then final takeaway, that one is from me, but read more books. They're, you know, like there's full of interesting stuff, and even from 1954, it's never too late. So I did prepare some like further reading. So this is, you know, this is an ancient classic. You know, it can be fun, but we did have a very praised book. This was a lot in the, at least in the like, you know, like in blogs and internet that I read a few years ago. A new book that's, I feel, very much a modern spiritual successor, Calling Bullshit, The Art of Skepticism in a Data-Driven World. It is like very similar. It very much tries to follow recent example, and then, you know, like again, not to make this a political talk, but like it's a lot about, you know, like Trump and that election.
Regarding that, I have a question about, you said the first book was written in 1954, and it was already talking about these things that we still see to this day. And do you think things have gotten worse with the inclusion of social media and all that to deceive people, or was it worse in the past when people didn't have a lot of access to information?
So I'm a little bit short on 1954, so it's like hard to give context on that. But like just, you know, from the top of my head, like it feels that it's likely that it's easier to get the same sort of like the same statistics or the same misleading into more eyes and have kind of like a bigger impact or a bigger effect that way. Or like you hear a lot that our attention spans have gotten down, so maybe we're less diligent thinking about the stories or analyzing our emotional reactions to them. But those are, you know, from the top of my head, so not in the book. But thank you for the question. Yeah, but then this is, you know, like this is a lot of recent news examples, and, you know, like trying to really analyze like what's going on here. The books have received like amazing praise. Like if you look at the back, like it has really fantastic blurbs. I must admit, like I tried really hard liking this book. Like I really tried reading it, and it was hard to read. Like I think like the information in there was actually really interesting, but it really lacks that, you know, like tongue-in-cheek humor of somebody trying to, you know, teach you how to lie with statistics. So, you know, very relevant book, very current. Give it a try, and, you know, if you do get through it, please let me know. And then we had one more. This is Swedish, like since like a local audience. So this one also also tiny, also something that you can do like in a few afternoons. But a lot more about, like this one does try to capture the humor vibe. So like the title, "Där ju sant, det står ju I tidningen," like fantastic, right? So like a translation would be like, it has to be true, it was in the newspaper, and really trying to go like into Swedish local recent examples about like stuff again where the data itself was not the problem, right? The story around it was the problem. So this one I have gotten through, so this one I can recommend full-heartedly. And that's kind of like what I had prepared. So thank you very much for your attention. And do you have any questions?
At least I have one question to the audience. How many wants to buy the book now? The first one. The main
good
book.
one.
I really want to. So I was just curious. So you succeeded in my case.
Excellent.
It seems like an excellent read.
I can pass them around if you want to take a look as well.
But perhaps more important questions.
I have a question, both for you and Carissa. But how do you have any tricks or tips onto how not to fall into those pits? If you can sort of, this is wrong, or this is they are trying to lie here, because I've fallen down to all these bits in the recent week, I think. So I want to be faster to sort of pinpoint those tricks.
Carissa, do you have any first thoughts?
Yeah, I was. Okay, I have to, pretend I'm singing or something. Yeah, no, I think it was really good what you said about see your emotional reaction to it. There's a philosopher I like, and he calls it, if something like tastes too yummy, then you should be really careful of it, right? If you see like a graph and you're like, oh my God, like, and you feel this like if it makes you angry or if it makes you too happy, like most things are not that serious in the world. Like everything is pretty like standard usually. So if you're having too strong a reaction, then someone's probably manipulating you, I think. But I think also just like learning about this stuff can go a really long way. So you probably won't fall for it next week. We'll see.
We'll see on Monday.
Yeah, I don't think I have that much to add, but like I do get like I personally get itchy every single time I see a graph that doesn't start at 0 now. So that was like my biggest and now I know that like the lie factor is the word for it as well. So I'm gonna use that all of the time. But I think just sort of like a healthy skepticism about who is telling you the story, and realizing that everything, even if it's like if you receive as an attachment an Excel file, that is still storytelling. Like somebody is still telling you a story with that. Like somebody offered that with some intent. And that can be a very well-intentioned intent, but like we should still like take the data. We should realize what they were after, and trying to see the data in that eyes and sort of like see if our expectation kind of like matches their intent. And it can be a newspaper article, or it could be at work, or it could be. Any more thoughts, questions? Any recent examples of any of this, like in? Yeah, Elon, exactly. Yeah, Elon was doing that.
It was something with Steve Jobs. That's
If I remember correctly, one not that recent, but however modern, is Steve Jobs showing the trend of iPhones, right? If I remember. Wasn't it you? No? You can Google it. But also, to me, it was the same. The first time I heard about looking at the axis, it's an itch for me now. And also when you present line charts side by side, when they have different values, that really hurts nowadays. It didn't used to. So I think you're in good hands now, Max.
Done that today.
I can actually show you, like I said that I'm not going to show the bonus slides because they're like not polished, but I really want to give a shout out to this guy. Like maybe you've heard of this before, Tyler Vegan. So he has this fantastic like website or like blog or whatever, where he kind of like shows things that are completely correlated, like they're correlated, but they have no causation between each other, and also like the same thing. So like different axes, So he's just looking for data points that are gonna align nicely. And like another theme presented in the book is sort of like this, correlation is not causation that we've all heard lots about. And he just pumps out these graphs, which it can be really. I mean, imagine if somebody tried to be proactive about this, like read this graph, it's like wow, U.S. spending on science, suicides by hanging, makes a suicides in attempt of getting the U.S. spending on science up, like that. So stuff like that can be can be really dangerous. So I think it's an interesting thing to follow around. Are we done, or do I need to show the other unfinished slides?
Let's see some inside.
Excellent. Okay, but then thanks a lot for all of you.